There is a lot of doubt whether Trial GP is still the reference of what our sport really is. Basically, is you're signing the death sentence of your business these days. For us, for example, that would be the killer. First question is, would we be able to make a motorcycle? Yes. We have the capabilities. Yes, we will be able to do it.
Welcome, Trials Riders. It's with great pleasure to feature Jan Cardinaels on our very first podcast. Jan is the co-owner of the popular trials brand Jitsie. We talk about how he first got into trials, where the name Jitsie comes from, the current state of Trial GP and the future of trials. Jan, thanks for taking the time to do this and telling us your story. Listeners, enjoy the show.
This Downtime podcast is brought to you by BVM Moto. Shop online or in-store for great deals and get professional advice on your favourite bikes, parts, clothing and accessories.
So, how did you actually get into trials? Your dad was a trials driver, I take it?
Yeah, my dad was a trials rider. He started off when he was, I think, 29 or something. And then, like every kid, I went to trials with him. I got a Monty.
Yeah.
I started riding at home. Got like a big tractor tire in the garden.
Yeah.
Some wooden logs. Started going over that. Did some bicycle trials when I was like 7, 8 years old. We went to some competitions for that. And then I really got into it when we used to go to our club trials and my dad was riding. We used to take two elderly people to the trial because they were observers, but they were like in their mid-70s going towards 80s. And the man was half deaf and couldn't drive a car, but the woman, she was like a third grandmother to me.
Yeah.
So we would sit in the car every Sunday in the morning, play like a card game or whatever. But those people were really cool, and the reason I'm saying that is because the man actually built my first bike. He was like an old engineer, and he really was into engines and mostly into trains, but also into bikes and all that. And he built this homemade bike, small wheels, I think 16 inch or something. And just that was my first real bike.
Yeah.
And it was really funny because back in the day, my dad, he had like a trailer, but it only carried one bike. So he had to drive his bike to our local area, drive back home, get my bike, and drive it back to the area. So rode that for quite a bit actually. I think about 3-4 months. And then that bike just had its limits because it really didn't have any suspension. It really didn't have any brakes. It was good to ride in the parking lot, but not to do anything trials.
Yeah.
And then this one day we, at a local dealership where my dad always used to go, they had this Honda TLM 50. The bike you see downstairs in the building.
That is the actual bike?
That is the actual bike. Yeah. And I saw that and you just...
How old were you then?
I was 8.5.
It's quite a big bike though, is it not?
Yeah, but I was already a little bit taller anyway. So it was big for me, but it was a 50 and it was easy to start. And I tried the bike a little bit in the parking lot, and then my dad said, well, how are we going to sell this to your mother? Because I just can't carry your bike here and she's going to kill me. So my mother was a bit tough on that and said like, no problem. You can have the bike, she said, but you first have to like get a good grade at school.
Yeah.
But she really put a stupid like expectation on that. So, I don't know if it was an act of God or whatever, but next exams, I absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Came out still today, like 32 years later, still can't believe I did that. Pure brilliance.
Yeah.
So that was definitely meant to be, but I came home and showed the car and she was like, shit. She was really like, what the hell happened here then? So I was like, let's go then. So I got that bike and I started riding, and I remember the first day I rode that bike, you know, going on just on a straight in a parking lot at that training area, because it's also a motocross track. And I wasn't going that quick, but there was this one rock in the parking lot, one rock, hit the rock with the front, and just went over the bars, and the bike just was, you know, back in the days it was still like metal fuel tanks, dented, unreal dent in that thing. That entire bike was bent and all that, so yeah, that was my first day ever on a real trials bike. I will never forget that. I was like bruised everywhere, bleeding. My dad was like, in panic. Not only for that, but also for the fact that we still had to go home, of course, and see our mother. So yeah, that's how I really got into it. And then afterwards, I think from the day I can remember, we went to trials. My dad is really...
Your dad is still like riding that. How old is he now? 69?
69.
And like yesterday, it was pretty impressive, I think, what he was doing in that practice area.
Yeah.
For that age, you know.
Well, age is just a number. He's really taking care of himself. He rides about 3 times a week. He definitely rides 3 times a week. He has a personal trainer.
Yeah.
He eats lean. He takes care of himself. He doesn't do anything too silly. But yeah, it shows you that if you take care of yourself and you keep going and you don't lose the focus. I think he's really strong at not losing focus, in the sense that he's had some injuries, he's had some issues and back pains and all that.
Yeah.
But the reason why he has a personal trainer is because by training up his core and training up the muscles around his knees, he's actually gone off medication and off painkillers to just dealing with it, strengthening everything around it. And because he's riding all the time, he can just cope with it, and he doesn't really have any issues. It goes a bit up and down like for anyone, but he still does the 4 days in the cruiser. He can, like you said yesterday, he rode all day. I mean, he didn't stop. Yeah. So he's
doing good.
Yeah.
And you made it to like a high level in trials, really, didn't you? I mean, you rode the World Championship.
I did. I think.
For how many years was?
Just 2.5. Yeah, I started when I turned 16, and I stopped when I was 18 and a bit. I'm happy what I did. I think for what I was capable of doing at that time, I did the best, but it was just a very difficult time. I came up when Fresha was there, when Kawastani was there. There's a lot of Spanish kids coming through, and coming from a smaller country, and you can see that these days as well, the experience is less. We don't really know how to train, how to prepare. The national championships are not such a great level, so you're not really, let's say, from a young age, you don't look up to something like that, like amazes you, like in the Spanish championship, or even the French, or even in the English championship, in the British championship. There is a lot more youth coming through because there's a plan all the way. In other countries, that's not so much the case, especially in the smaller countries. One of the countries that's doing really well is Germany, because there's a lot of kids riding there. But going back to my career, I just felt really hampered by going to school, having to do exams, having to like fit it all in. In hindsight, also back in the day, you had a World Championship which was 12 rounds. A European Championship that was 8 or 10 rounds. It just was too much. Looking back at it, I should have just chosen one championship and do that and don't do anything else. But it was just difficult, and then at some point I just clicked, in the sense that I said, well, I'm not enjoying it enough to be able to do that. The other side was also a little bit difficult, that my parents didn't have a business of their own, or so I couldn't really fall back onto that. And then to give up everything for a very uncertain future was tricky. And tricky in my family, but also tricky for me, because I didn't really felt
like you could see a future there, really, like a long term.
Looking back at that particular point, I just didn't feel like that was for me. I mean, I've felt really passionate to be involved in trials and to to make a mark in trials, but not particularly as a rider. And I always had in my mind that I wanted to have a business of my own in trials. And everything I did in school and at university was actually in preparation for that. Like learning Spanish, doing German, doing business school, going away afterwards to the UK to live there.
So you've always felt like from an early time then that you wanted to have a business? Even from really early on, I just felt really more fire going that way than just saying, look, I want to be a rider and that's it. And in hindsight, that really just worked out a lot better for me as well. Yeah, definitely so. Because you worked for Pico, didn't you? So you lived over in the UK for how long?
Almost 3 years. I lived in Burnley.
And what did you do at Pico?
I was marketing manager. And I also helped them out with some export customers that they had. But that was the most unreal period, I think. Going out of uni, I was out of school for, I think, 2 days. And then they invested rang me up and said, do you want to come over to the UK and have a look at our business? And I had known him quite a while because with Foot and Mouth, they came over a lot to Belgium and we built up a relationship, and with Mika. So we knew each other. But for him to call me up after university and no work experience whatsoever and to say, look, you can come and do marketing and do all that was quite a big step for me as well. But that was incredible, and I learned a lot there.
And is that when you first come up with Jitsie, when you were there?
No. Oh no. Back when I was at uni, the final years of the studies, you had to set up a business. Because I did economics, and I specialized in title is actually is entrepreneurship. So that's sort of like setting up stuff, setting up a business, building it up, building up a brand that everything that goes with that particular thing. That was what I specialized in at my final year in school, and that's why I had to set up the business and do everything with it. And that was back in 2003 or 4, I think. 2004, and that was actually the early days of e-commerce. And that's another passion I have, because I really like the entire process of how e-commerce works, how you set it up, how you maintain it, the ERP systems that you need to run it in a business, and how that all, back in the day, that was really small and really unknown. And that was my thesis, was that to set up a full working e-commerce site, which was actually the first Jitsie site there ever was. That was just it's very common now, but back in the day, that was even to put almost like an Excel file with some 2-3 pictures with the product or with the website was pretty much hard work, and then to accept payment online, that was a hard work. But I'm pretty proud that back in the day, that was one of the first ones to do that. But that's where the Jitsie brand name actually comes from. It's actually the first letter of my name, and the last bit is actually a slang for how in the Swiss mountains, that slang deforms the name of someone that they like. And that actually comes from the word Jitsie. And that means darling. And because my name is Jan, and you take away the Jan and you do it by the Atsi, and then to reform that and mold it a little bit, it felt like it didn't really have a firm meaning in our business. It didn't really have a weird extra meaning somewhere.
It could be anything, couldn't it?
It could have been anything. The .com was available. It was a short name, and it just had a ring to it that, the sound of the word had something cool. And that's how I started saying that for a while, and started thinking about it, and then asked people, what do you think? And the good thing was that a lot of people really couldn't make out what it really, really was. And that really clicked into me. I I can basically do whatever I want in the future with this brand name.
Yeah.
But also I can also do something with it on an international level. Whereas if you have a brand name that is, for example, too local or too like typical in one language, you will struggle at the longer run to see, for example, if you go to the States, but if you go to a Spanish country or even if you go to China.
Yeah.
So that was the sort of stuff I took into mind back then, and that's how that came about.
Yeah, I think it's something that's well known now, isn't it? You know, I think everyone's heard it. And like you say, it's not a tongue twister or anything like that, is it? It just,
I don't think so. Not so far, people haven't said that yet. A lot of people ask me what the name means because they kind of expect
it to have a meaning or something.
It to have a real meaning connected to trials, but it definitely doesn't.
Yeah. And I remember your the first clothing that you brought out. What year was that?
I think it must be around 2008 something.
I think I remember it as like, we used to say it almost looked like bumblebee colours, like black, like grey and yellow. Did you do it?
It was. Yeah. It was back in the day. To start the story, or that reason why we did clothing was actually because we didn't really want to, or I didn't really want to, but it felt impossible at the time to not do it. In the sense that, like, Jitsie as a brand needed to be full-on trials, meaning from the smallest bolt to the most important item on a bike to a helmet to whatever. So it just wasn't, the process was there to do that. We focused a lot on parts before and making sure that we had a basis that we could work with. The clothing came about because actually it was my father back in the day who said, look, I think we have to put away our thoughts that not doing that is an option. I think sometimes you just have to do stuff that maybe isn't your first choice, but you have to do it because it makes the whole better. And that's how we really started doing that. But then I think we really early on made the decision, look, we're not going to do the 5th copy of back in the day Hebo. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't. You have to go up to what was then the market leader, and you just have to compete with them. And then they had a really big bunch of riders riding for them, and it was too difficult. So we really made a conscious decision to say, look, we're going to make it something different, and then go from there and just work it every year and see what people say. And it just really opened up the possibilities as well of understanding that there is a big bunch of people who ride trials in the competition, but the bunch of people who ride trials outside of competition is probably tenfold of that.
You think so?
At the time it definitely was. Yes. Now these days it's more difficult to really judge that, although I do think that the amount of people who ride trials like for a pure hobby without outside of competition is still quite a bit larger than the ones that do competition. But that's for sure. So we just did stuff differently. We decided to go for different colors, to do different fabric, to do different like shapes of clothing. And then of course the first few years were quite a struggle to understand what you actually had to do. But then the first year we really exploded in sales was when we did that Bolt gear, the T1 Bolt. With Jack Shepherd. That was a massive hit for us because that seemed to like have the right balance between the way the quality of the pant was, the cut of the pant. That was also the time where knee protectors started becoming more common and more accepted. And back in the day, that was the only pant really you could wear that wouldn't really hamper anything you would do with any. If it was a brace or a protector, it didn't really matter. You could wear that, and that was really like for us a clicking point where we said, look, we're just gonna block out everything what everyone else do, and just do our own thing. And we might lose a few, but for sure if we do it that way, we're gonna have a few winners that really carry everything. And that logic has been with the design team for the last years. So, and that has really worked for us. Also in terms when you start going for helmets and all that. I mean, we just launched the HD1 helmet, which is the first helmet to have an integrated peak, which is a big thing because constructionally, although it might look really easy from the outside, in a trials helmet where volume is very important, you just can't simply say I'm going to make that entire shell bigger and to integrate that peak. So there's a lot of work that gone into that to make that workable, but that also shows that where we're going in the future with the HD2 helmet, which we're going to change in the future, which has a totally different look, still based on what we have, but a lot of new features, a lot of safety features, but also with an incredibly different system of a peak. But it's a risk, but it's like, in our opinion, if we want to be the leader and maintain to be a leader, we just have to put it out there and say, look, this is what we can do. And that's important to us, and it's important to the people that like our brand and buy our product. Is that?
Because I also remember going back to when it first came out, it was all the anodized hard parts and such as well, which working in the bike shop at the time was quite new. Really, because like in motocross and such, I remember there was always loads of options, and trials it was really very like original parts, and that was kind of it. Maybe the odd aftermarket levers and that such, but all of a sudden we had to have whole new racking with all these aftermarket products that was available.
I still think to date that one of the things that we changed in some way in our business is to introduce that aftermarket business to the trial, which we all take for granted now, but back in the day that was the real opportunity for us. And it's still one of those things where we think that we were the first to really put it out there, and also put it out there not only for a few, but on a larger scale, and not just stuff that's like, I would say, like easy to do, but also stuff that's adding value to a bike, that's protecting a bike, that's even making it better. And the bunch of product has actually grown a lot over the years, and I think also that we've always been really involved in designing everything, and developing it and making sure it all works, it fits, it's quality. A lot of the stuff is actually still made here in Belgium. We have manufacturers all over the world, but that bit was really instrumental for us, and that allowed us to get our sales going quite rapidly early on, which was super important to survive, of course, as a business. But that was to be honest, a really cool period as well, because the playing field was open. It was just a matter of, have you got an idea? Yeah, we can do it straight away, and you can just go for it. Whereas these days, there's a few more players. Some of the manufacturers also start doing their own stuff, but still to date, I think we do have quite a fair bit of stuff that's different to everyone else. We just redesigned all of our plastic protectors, which we control now, where we just felt like, okay, it's bearing our brand name, it needs to be spot on, it needs to fit perfect, it needs to have also the protecting exactly where we need it. So all that detail now comes into play, to be honest, way more than it did back in the day, because when we were all alone, it wasn't that important. Whereas these days, of course, it needs to be spot on, needs to be perfect, needs to fit straight on. And of course, with all those years, you get more experience, we get more people working for us. We have a lot of teams and a lot of mechanics from the World Championship paddock, for example, that tell us exactly what they want. It's not because we don't work with the teams that we don't have contact with everyone that says, like, hey, could you possibly do that for us? We've done some vertical parts now as well. Stuff that should have been there already ages ago, but because nobody really has the time to handle that stuff, it's just we were lucky to have them as first. But
and also, like, you've started into like the plastics as well, like with the gas rear mud guard.
When Gas went bankrupt a few years ago, I just felt like we had to step up the OEM ideas that we have, in the sense that
I mean, kind of like going back to, like, say, like motocross and such, you can buy aftermarket plastics and they're cheap. Where trials, it's still one of the big expenses for on a lot of bikes, isn't it? Really, like for original Beta mudguard, for example, is like well over like £100 British pounds now.
I think that all comes down to product design in the sense that a gas mudguard, of course, is smaller, so the tooling to produce that mudguard is quite a fair bit cheaper. The plastics itself are not that expensive, but of course you have to calculate the amount of plastics you could possibly sell to make sure you can actually pay for that tooling, because that tooling still, even with the gaskets, is super expensive. We just had the idea quite early on already as well that in the long term we want to, and that's not for the Jitsie brand but actually for the company behind it, Off-Road Action, to be a distributor for anything trials. And anything trials really basically means standard parts, OEM parts and aftermarket parts. The OEM business or the OEM parts is something that still we keep fighting every day to obtain more, but unfortunately we struggle to sell that thought to the OEM manufacturers to grant us the possibility to distribute those parts, because I'm strongly convinced that with strong parts availability all over the world we would sell a lot more trials bikes. This is a big issue. I mean, and in the UK it's quite good, but let's not forget there's more than the UK. There's a lot of countries that are smaller, that have their own restrictions, and these days we feel it's really important for success that you order today and the next day you have it. There's nothing worse, and I'm taking my dad as an example, to not being able to ride on the weekend because you're waiting for parts. That to me is unacceptable. We would not accept that. For example, when we go to a supermarket, we wouldn't go to a supermarket and order product there. You wouldn't go to a car garage and then just sit there and leave the car there for 2 weeks because the spare parts are not there. That just simply doesn't work anymore these days.
No. Everyone expects next day really now, isn't it?
That's the golden rule. We've all been I would say influenced by Amazon and eBay and all that. And we just have to step that up, and I'm hoping that's one of my big goals, is to convince the manufacturers to work with us and to open up that branch to make sure that we can sell more bikes, because from experience we know that the decision to buy a trials bike is also determined by the fact, will the dealer be able to help me with spare parts? Will I be able to, if I get into an issue, even in countries where there's maybe a dealer only 5 hours away from you, will I be able to get a simple seal next day? Like, because if your oil cover seal is leaking, you just simply can't ride. It's a 20-cent part maybe, but you need it. Will I be able to get that? And if that's not there, and especially these days where people have so much choice to do whatever they want, or to do a sport, or to do mountain biking, whatever, or motocross or enduro, we need to be competitive. And being competitive doesn't necessarily mean that the bike needs to be incredible. It also means that the entire structure around it needs to be a lot more competitive than it is these days. Because we have great bikes, but the rest of the, let's say, service and availability and even pricing is a little bit on the steep end compared to other sports. So it's a tricky one, because of course the volumes are what they are at the moment. But I remember when I started riding a bike, I mean, I think for a 125 beta back in the day it was like €4,000. Whereas these days those bikes go to €6,500.
It's gone up a lot, hasn't it?
It's gone up a lot, and that's.
It's going to be even higher again in 2020.
Well, if the OEMs continue to put high-end material on bikes and not offer lower end for people to step into it, well, that is what you do get. I mean, there is incredible product out there. But €1,000 shock, for example, on a standard bike, that's not even the case on motocross bikes, on KTMs or whatever. But we're doing our trials. Whoever wants to have that, for me, fine, no problem. But make it an option. Don't make it the standard for everyone, because we would be way better off having intro models at reasonable pricing for good quality, where people can step into it, that also halves the price afterwards in spare bikes or in second hands, and to motivate people. Just the step into the sport isn't 6,000 or 5,000. If you have €1,500, you need to be able to get going, because that's to me, that's the investment that the industry has to do to get more people in. We do need more places to ride. We do need a lot of stuff. But the first step is
the purchase of the bike.
Is the purchase of the bike. A lot of people don't think first, who am I going to ride that thing? They think, can I actually pay for a bike?
Yeah.
And once they do that and they start knowing the community a little bit, they'll find places to ride. And a trials bike isn't really a big problem anywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, and especially if those people do motocross and other sports, it's an extra.
Yeah.
And that extra can't be too expensive.
And did you have Dougie right from the start with the clothing, or did it?
No, we didn't.
Because he's been your longest standing rider, would you say?
Well, Dougie, the relationship with Dougie and the entire family started back in 1999. Well, even before. Well, back in 1999, Dougie was world champion with the Beta. And then the year after, he made the switch to Montesa.
Yeah.
And back in the day, my father with Radson was already sponsoring Stefan Everts. And
that's the Radson radiators, is it? Yeah.
They were sponsoring Stefan Everts, basically because selling radiators and selling anything to do with the building or the construction business is really linked into the motorcycle business.
Right.
A lot of people who work in construction ride bikes.
Right.
And they did a lot of study on that, and for them to build the Radson brand name, they needed to be present in motorcycling.
Yeah.
That was very, very obvious to my father back in the day. So they started talking with Dougie and with his manager Jake Miller in the day, and it was a big investment to do that because Dougie at the time was also making the switch to Montesa.
Yeah.
So there was stressful times for Dougie, for them to decide whether to do with Beta and to do it with Honda or with Montesa. It was difficult times to do the sponsorship deal because it was more restrictive with Beta than it was with Montesa.
Yeah.
Because making the switch also made that they had a little bit of a bargaining position to say, look, we need to take control of our own image, and whatever we do, we need to be able to get more sponsorship in.
Yeah.
And they did a great job, and back in the end, Dougie chose to go to Montesa.
Mm-hmm.
And once that deal was done, they started talking about Radson, and that's how we really got to know them. And then Dougie wrote had Radson sponsorship for the next, I think, 7 years or something. Yeah. Basically up to the point where his Montesa contract finished, he was always Radson, always. And Dougie then went back to Beta and then finished off his international career over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And then when the day he stopped doing the World Championship was the day that we got together and really got going with him. Mm. And then we haven't stopped anymore since back then.
Yeah.
So we've still been working for a long time with him.
And like you say, you've got quite a close relationship with him, you say?
Yeah, I would think.
I think like from this weekend it looks like old friends really, when you see with such, but also at the same time like business driven as well, like helping each other, like.
I think what really works with Dougie as both ways is that we've both understood from each other what we expect from our relationship. We've both understood is that by pushing Dougie and by making Dougie our number one, it's opened up our brand name to a lot more than just trials. Dougie has a standing. Dougie matters, and Dougie doesn't only matter in trials but also outside, and that's really important to us. He's done incredible products together with Red Bull, so that's even made it easier for us to get a bigger audience. But on the other hand, we've also made sure that Dougie always had good stuff, good service, and also content, because over the last 3 to 4 years Jitsie has made a big push into producing content.
That was going to be one of the questions actually. I think your brand is probably one of the first to really push on social media really as a brand rather than just the product. It's more like a lifestyle and more, not just this is the latest product, buy it as such.
No, we do. Well, it is a lifestyle. I mean, trials, and especially for our core customers and our core people, they want to live it, and they want to live it from the inside, the same as we do. And it's been really normal to us to just open that up to everyone and try to make them part of what we're doing, because we do get a lot of people just helping us, like people who follow the brand and also giving us suggestions. And lately, for example, to give you an idea, people are even inviting our guys to come over and ride, and organizing everything for them, for the simple reason that we would produce the content around it, and we would like make a good story out of it. I mean, going to YouTube and looking to Richard and Jan in their adventures. That was a crazy thing to start, because to explain that, for example, inside the company was tricky, because it's a lot of investment needed from us. But now this is the second year, and the boys they've just done an 8-week trip, going to Sandigosa, Scotland, America. Well, they've been around, but the entire story around is just so much fun. For people to just be at the Scottish and to look at Dougie and to see what he's actually going through. I mean, I don't think that was ever done before.
No, definitely not.
And especially not at that personal level that we can do with him. The good thing is also that we understand now how Dougie clicks, in the sense that we know how to approach him in an event. I mean, if he's in the winning mood or in the winning spirit, you need to be. The boys know how to handle that, and so far that's been going really well. Recently, just to give you an idea, the video, for example, from Sandigosa got over 150,000 views. I mean, there's only a few references in trials. That's Tony Bow, who gets a lot of views, of course. But besides that, the playing field is open, and I don't think really, in terms of a brand, what a brand can do, I think we're right up there. We're just battling with a few of the top riders, because it's easier to follow a top rider than to follow a brand. I mean, that feels like, that step is higher, but even people, we can see from the views that people do like what we're doing and do push us to do more of it. And it's actually a plan that we want to continue, but we want to really experience and share how trials is done all over the world. That was actually the initial beginning, the initial idea actually of why we're doing this, was to enter Jan into, of course the German, but then also the French, the Spanish, the British and American championship, and have him do one round of each championship, and then to compare them and to see why is that one good, what doesn't work there, what is it like to do those events,
and how they do it and how they go approach it.
And that, he hasn't done that particular thing, but we've done Scottish, the Sandigosa. He went to Sweden to do a Swedish championship, which was unreal place to ride, but an unreal atmosphere. The way trials really was, not too many annoying rules, not too much hassle with time and with all that. No, just plain and simple. You show up, you sign up, you ride, you get a cup if you've won, and you go home, and not too much hassle around it. We've just come back from the US. That was their second or third trip, because I think last season they did Canada, which was unreal as well. I mean, they get like a super warm welcome. But based on that thing, we went to the US. They got invited for the super trial. They stayed on for the national round the week after. But them as well, they do an incredible show. They do an incredible family gathering. But they have got some different rules on how to do the trial. But there's so much experience all over that doesn't get shared, which is quite weird, because over the last 2 years we've invested a lot of money in Trial GP, and we've always seen Trial GP as a reference. But with the recent shift in the promoter, there is a lot of doubt whether trial GP is still the reference of what our sport really is. And I'm not saying that because of my personal experience, I'm just saying that based on the experience, what you can actually see in the vlogs. What do you actually see? And well, besides the British Championship and the Scottish, of course, where there is no stop, where sections are pretty much always in a straight line, in the Scottish at least. But everywhere else, unfortunately, trial GP isn't the priority anymore. And that's very different to when we started the brand. The World Championship was like the place to be, the motor of everything. And now, over the last 10 years, and especially over the last few years, we've experienced that firsthand, going everywhere, that the trial GP is fantastic, but it's not like...
It's not everything.
No. And that's a big shift. That's a big shift and a big, I would say, hurdle that needs to be conquered again in the future. Because if we don't have a high level that's representative for the core of our sport, basically we don't have a sport.
I see, like, we see it at the shop, there's so many people that don't even know there was a World Championship last weekend in Holland. Some even wouldn't know that there's like a British Championship.
Yes.
It's and it seems more and more that way.
Unfortunately, in the French Championship, of course, for example, there's only 4 riders in the top route, and 5 riders in the top route. It seems, and based again on experience, what we've seen, so not my personal experience, a lot of the decisions made everywhere have always been around making it easier for the riders to find or to motivate them to come. Whereas back in the day when I was riding, it was more about having a great event, like a challenging day, with not too many rules, but a 6 to 7 hour trial, and I'm talking about the higher end, the higher level, where you would like be doing 3 laps of 12 or 3 laps of 15 even. The sections weren't stupid, they were technical, but again, they weren't always in the summer either. Back in the day when trials was big, we had a World Championship in the winter. Never understood why we went out of the winter. Never understood that, because here in Belgium, cyclocross is big. It's freezing cold, it's snowing, it's raining, it's muddy, and there's still 10 to 20,000 people outside the track. And why is that as well? It's because the show is good. There's not much on the winter. And especially in trials, when we do it in the winter, you would see something different, and always the highest possible step. Because basically that's what it's all about. We all want to see Tony Bow, and possibly the others as well. If the step is 2.5 meters, we want to see him do 3 meters. And that's slipped into the minds of the organizers, the federation. That's how we do it. The level between Trial GP and Trial 2 is ridiculously high. But going from Trial 2 to Trial 125 is even higher, because Trial 125 isn't the stepping stone anymore. It's pretty much a club trial where anyone can ride, and don't worry, you won't have to do anything big. We just make silly little stuff, and that's what it is. That to me isn't the experience that works. In MXGP, we have like step-up classes, but competition in 125 in youth or in EMX is unreal. For you to even ride top 20 in EMX 125 is so difficult. But they've got like 100 riders lining up for that particular category, because everyone wants to be in MXGP. But here it seems like we seem to be happy with having just 10, 12 riders in Trial GP, let them do the crazy stuff. And the Trial 2 now has become the biggest class, because that's actually the one that's rideable. That's like a good trial. It's a good one. It's a real, to me,
it's the most interesting as well, I think. Someone's new on the podium every week.
Don't know who's going to win. You could have really upsets. You could have I don't know, somebody wins this week could be 10th next week. That is what a real championship is about. But we don't see that in Trial GP. We do see that in Trial 125 as well. But yeah, it seems like something's broken over the last few years. And to repair that, we need more experience coming from other places, and to share that and to make some good decisions, because otherwise it's just not helping us. It's not helping the manufacturers, it's not helping the brands, it's not helping the shops, and we're just doing bad to our sport.
Yeah. And look, you've expanded into the cycle trials now as well.
Yes.
Is it, do they have the same struggles in that? Or?
It's a very different approach to that one, but again there as well, these days it seems that everything has to be easy for the public, in the sense that they need to be seated they have to be seated in a chair. If they're not there, they need to have big screens. And if that's not the case, they need to be able to watch everything live on TV or on YouTube. Well, for the last 4 to 5, we've been in there for 4 years, and in 4 years I've only seen parking lots. Whereas everything is man-made, and that's it. That's how it is. The most fun I ever had at a UCI World Cup is a few years back in Poland, where they made the section on like a little hill with like roots and like rock in it, and it started raining a little bit. Everybody there went berserk because that was impossible and all that. It was the best riding I'd ever seen from riders, because they were being challenged. It wasn't about doing the same clinical stuff all the time. No, it was different.
How to find grip
and all that. On that end as well, it seems like we're trying to make our sport something that it isn't. It has to be, or the first customer of a Trial GP or a UCI World Cup is still the riders, and they need to be challenged. And the purpose of those events is actually to show what can be done with a bike. And showing with a bike doesn't mean just doing a 3-meter step, because in bicycle trials that's exactly the same. It's also about finding lines, it's also about finding grip, it's also how to get out of a difficult spot. And we've actually pushed it all the way just to make it like a box standard product, which is finished in 3 to 4 hours, and that's it. But that was never the goal of trials. But when it was started, it was just, they were trying to destroy the bikes by riding them as long as possible in the most difficult situation. Now it seems like, we do the shortest amount of time possible, and that is really, it feels awkward. It feels awkward that we've gone that way.
And it's weird, like, it's just over time, I suppose, it's just started to slowly creep it, and now we've got to somehow try and rein it back.
It's difficult that way.
Who's want to do that?
Well, I'm a strong believer that with all the struggles that's happening now, that at some point it's going to click. Whether that be from the manufacturers or from the FIM or the UCI or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Even personal opinion, because a lot of people have their personal opinion about, for example, no stop or how trials will run or all that. To me, what really matters is that when you look at the data and you look at what has worked in the past, what works in sports that are close to you, and what works in sports that are mainstream. And you need to make a mix of those things. But it seems clear to me that running a world championship without 100 riders in that day who do 6 hours of riding don't make no sense to me. And we're going back to the motorcycle thing there, because on bicycle they actually have a better system where they do qualifying and they go up towards a final. So you do have a lot of action throughout the weekend. But there again, it just seems weird to me, like that riders finish a trial and they're not even tired anymore. I always thought the physical aspect also played a part of it. These days, okay, maybe yes, there was an exception with the weather. But go to any normal trial now, and they finish a trial and they just chill, no problem.
No problem at all. Hardly break a sweat.
Hardly break a sweat, because that's, compared to what they train during the week, that's easy days. I think that's wrong. I think that just goes against what I feel as when I go riding, or even when you look at my dad, you know, he gives everything so he can go like relaxed home and say, look, I've put it all out there.
And he'll be able to sleep well at night.
Yeah. The bicycle stuff is also maybe a little bit less relevant to the listeners that you have, but it's also quite a good thing. I do want to mention that for a lot of trials riders, bicycle trials really is good. I think that's really, you know, bicycle trials is fun, it's not dangerous, it gives you good balance, good core strength. And
I think like as a child myself and like Lawrence, I know for a fact, like we grew up on push bikes and used to have pallets in the garden, and like you said, and you take those techniques to the motorcycle.
Yes, a lot of kids these days, what we see is that even on the motorcycles, they learn
straight away.
Voila. And if you have a good basic technique, you just go a lot farther in trials, and having good balance and having like that good strength on the bike and having a good position on the handlebar, it really helps when you're young to do bicycle trials, but even when you're older. Even people outside of trials like doing motocross and enduro, it does help because you're standing up, you're following lines, you're working the bike. That goes, you take that with you into what else you do in trials or motocross or whatever. You take that with you. And that really works.
I think when I was a kid, like the TY80 was like the first bike you could really ride. And I think I was 9, 10 years old, where now it's more like 2-year-olds are out riding trials.
The electric bikes have done incredible good to the sport. I mean, a lot of people now can just ride in their garden, have their kids ride there. We still need to see the actual real boom of that. I mean, Osada have done the groundworks. They have done really well. They're producing really good bikes, but it's still waiting for that big boom everywhere for that to become a bit more mainstream everywhere. But for sure, that's only a matter of time. That step is going to happen soon. But it doesn't really matter how people get into trials, whether it's with a bicycle, whether it's with an electric, whether it's with a step. As long as they get into it. And as you get into it and you're younger and you can grow into it, it just gives you a great basis to do whatever you want to do afterwards. If you stay in trials, if you want to go to another sport, but it does really. It's a full-on body sport. We see quite a lot of motocross riders will come and buy like a cheap used trials bike just for winter practice, really, to hone their skills in. Well, to give you an example, the Jorge Prado, who is the reference in MX2, at 18 years old, he started in trials. He still has a trials bike. He has one of our bicycle trials bikes. And that's because they value that training very much. But looking at, for example, the motocross in Turgenthal yesterday, every corner there was hard pack with a big rut. Well, if you win 1 to 2, maybe even to 3 tenths per corner by simply standing up and having a good flow on the bike, it's easier to win it there than to win it on the straight. So, and he's so good at it because he's always learned how to turn a bike, to not use the clutch that much, and to let the bike do the work and have a good position on that bike. And I'm not saying that's the key of his success, but it definitely has helped him, and that's what last time I spoke to him he said as well. That's why we keep riding the trials bike, even at the workshops in Italy where he now stays. He rides his trials bike there. He rides his bicycle, even on the smallest things. Just to have balance, to have core strength, to keep that going, and that works. Absolutely works.
And we're here at the Jitsie HQ, and like you say, you've done quite a lot of work recently, haven't you, on this place?
Well, it's been a process that we've grown quite a fair bit over the last 5 years. But in the last 2 years, we really invested in getting a really cool building, a place to work, and taking care of the people who work here, to have I would say to really connect them with trials. I mean, we're the only one who only do trials. We don't do anything else. We're not, let's say, losing focus on anything else besides doing that one thing, and we want to do that the best we can. The building we're sitting in now is a totally new building. It's been fully decorated, fully designed actually around the way a trial is held, in the sense that we have a training area outside. You've seen the container, but actually the reason why we bought the container is not simply to do promo work at the events, but actually when you go to a trial and you sign up, you either sign up in a caravan, in someone's Land Rover, in a container, or in a small clubhouse. So what we've done is we're going to put that next to our building, and that's going to be like where you sign in to come into the building as you would in a trial. When you come into the building, everything is divided into what we call working pods, where you have an open space design, but per group of people doing a task, they have the facilities to do that task just without being disturbed, without interfering with other stuff. And that's how it's designed, but all those pods are actually sections. So you'll see the next thing we're working on is like putting up section 1, 2, 3, and then going around the building to the meeting room where we're sitting now. And then you go into the warehouse where you'll have like the track, but the surroundings of the sections, where you'll see tape, where you see like, I don't know, balloons up in the air with the section marker. Everything is in the entire building has to be revolve around trials. And that's how we do the design, that's how we do everything. We're still working on decorating stuff, because I actually can run a museum these days with all the stuff I've gathered over the last 10 years. I've got so much. So we can really, when people come here, in 2 seconds you get the idea. You totally get the idea.
I think from spending like the weekend with you all, it's kind of like, it's impressive to see that you've all got the same idea. You've got to be in love with trials to be able to do what you were doing, really.
Well, if it's 35 degrees and we're doing a trial school and we're all tired and we still have to clean up a container, I mean, this is not going to work for people who are not into it and 200% into it. The upside of everything that we do and people that work here, I mean, we need the best people we can get and we can afford, and in trials. That's not easy. There's not that many people around who are willing to do what we're doing here. But the people that we have, in my opinion, are the best these days that we can get for and they're still all very young. They're still learning every day. But it is super important that they go to events, they go to see people. We're not some sort of like group of people that sits here and tells people this is what it is and this is good, and whatever you think of that is your problem. No, it doesn't work like that. We're all a group of people, like we have ideas, we make errors, but on the whole, we hope that we do good stuff. We promote what we do, we promote our sport, and we try to do the best that we can. But we are just a normal bunch of people who like to ride trials. That's still the core of everything that we do. That's the main reason why I started doing the business, because I just wanted to work in trials, but I also wanted to be in control of my own fate. And then if it didn't work out, at least I could always say, look, I've tried it. It didn't work out. But that's how I feel that we should do run the brand, run the business, and so far it's been going okay. We still have a lot of people who want to work here as well. I haven't seen them go running away that quick, even after yesterday. So as long as the mix is correct and people feel like there's good balance, yes, it seems like if you're into trials, this is the place to work.
Definitely so. But and is there any more kind of big changes you're thinking of trying to make or move into? Like you're saying you're 100% trials, you don't see yourself moving into other sports?
Let's just say it's not my priority at the moment. We do have a big issue that enduro is hurting us. From a few angles, in the sense that enduro is making trials more difficult because they basically ride around everywhere, and not all of them are maybe good to environment, not all of them are good to people around it, and that is a struggle to us because trials people usually are very different. Like they stay local, they stay in small areas, they don't really cause any big issues. And the other side as well is that we're losing, I would say, 1 to 2 top riders to enduro every year, which is quite annoying to get youngsters dreaming of having a career in trials, because they see
their heroes move across to,
which basically to hard extreme enduro, which is basically doing trials with a heavy bike. But that's where people are going these days. So to me, the brand has always been about trials. Does that mean that trials is on a bike or on a motorcycle like we think it is now? No, I consider trials to be something where you find a difficulty, and as long as it's got some wheels on you, if you get over the difficulty, to me that is trials. And whatever that brings in the future is we don't know that. We're still waiting for the electric bikes to really push forward, like the bigger bikes. There's still a lot of things that can be done in the future in terms of electric bicycles, perhaps, instead of, I don't know. It's just very tricky to see exactly what trials is becoming. I mean, you feel these days as well with street trials, for example, on the bicycles, that they can do, that's more like a mix of BMX, freestyle and whatever. But it seems like all of those things have one thing in common, is the basic skills of riding a trials bike. And as long as we feel that that is involved, that is a potential market where we could go into. That being said, we still work a lot on developing more product. We do have a lot of product coming, a lot of big projects as well. The big question is always, will we ever make a trials bike, a motorcycle? That's the question I get asked quite a lot. That question I can only answer, I have to ask in a few parts. First question is, would we be able to make a motorcycle? Yes. We have the capabilities. Yes, we will be able to do it. I think everyone, knowing with the experience we have now, could we do it? Yes. Second question, would you want to do it? Well, with 7-8 brands these days, it seems like it's not necessary to do that. It doesn't seem like there is any need at the moment for another brand to do that. That being said, and it goes back to what I've said earlier in the conversation, is that the question remains to me at the moment is, are we actually proposing the right product that would attract the most possible people? And it seems to me that at the moment we're mainly producing trials bikes as good as they can possibly be for real die-hard fans. And even to make that even more tricky, each brand is producing a new trials bike pretty much on a 3 to 4 month scale, which is tricky for everyone because it feels quite obviously quickly that your bike is old. So the industry has going from promoting the sport and selling one product as much as we possibly can without changing it too much, but maintaining a price level that's a bit lower, has gone to making factory models, replica models, small quantities, small batches, but at a much higher cost. And I don't think that is a strategy that really works for us in the long run. Because personalization is important these days, but personalization can be done in quite a few ways. And forcing someone to spend 7,000 to 8,000 euro on a bike, to me feels weird when you could possibly start selling that bike at 4,000 to 5,000 euro. and then just simply add stuff as you go along. Which, as we have seen in the bicycle business, actually that's how it's done.
Yeah.
So, but that requires a totally different mindset, a totally different approach, and also confidence. Confidence that the product you're making and the look you've given to it is good enough to be a basis. And then to connect with customers and to see, look, what you actually want your bike. To me, for example, and referring to motorcycle again, is buying a bicycle or buying a bike with suspension that is supposed to be good for everyone, for example, to me don't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in motocross, for example, because everybody does their suspension. What is the point of putting great suspension that is actually elite level on a motorcycle when it's not set up for you? When it's not doing what you need it to do? It looks great, but it's not doing what it's actually designed to do because the setup isn't there.
Yeah.
And that's looking, for example, yesterday the masterclass. Some people have good bikes, but they can't get even half out of it because the suspension setup is so bad that they just hit everything because the bike just reacts different to what they're expecting or what we're expecting to see. And then the final bit of that question is, do we want to do it? Can we do it? And then the final question is, or the final reply to that is the timing right to do it? Because the timing issue is a little bit awkward. Going back to 2005 or something, 6, the FIM pushed a rule that everybody had to go 4-stroke.
Yeah. Which soon got taken out, didn't it?
Well, basically when the other brands started working on that and saying, look, simply put, this is going to kill us.
Yeah.
I think, that got backed off quite a fair bit, and then it's just started to get like, okay, this is not going to work, this rule. But that created a lot of confusion because suddenly the FIM can tell you, look, you've made the investment, but that doesn't really is relevant. We can just go and do something else, and that's the new rule.
Yeah.
Coming back now over the next few years, they've tried to do that 4-stroke. It didn't work out for any of the brands, really, maybe except for Beta, but that's not really high-end competition either. It's a bit like...
Yeah, it's more of a good club.
A good clubman rider. Oh, no problem whatsoever. 4-strokes are good for doing trail riding, and in my opinion, they're good for the lesser riders, but the sound issue is a big issue.
Yeah.
And it's doing harm. It's doing harm to a lot of the clubs. But that being said, the 2-strokes these days are a lot better, a lot quieter. But then, of course, you go to the emission norms. The other problem with that is that, of course, to road register your bike, you're making the bike €500 more expensive because of all the extra parts and all that goes with it. So there is no long-term vision, we feel, from where are we actually going to go.
Yeah.
And for sure, if I was born not in 1979 but in 1969, that bike would have been here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure of that, because in the bicycle business we've seen in our bicycle stuff, we did all the apparel, we did the parts, to come to the conclusion that we couldn't find the manufacturers that were actually doing the service and the product at the level that we needed to sell our parts with.
Yeah.
So there were no bikes around good enough, or the manufacturers that were strong enough to do that properly. These days in the motorcycle, with exceptions of course, and especially now, unfortunately, with the situation at GasGas, we risk of losing a market leader. That remains a question: will someone else step up and understand, look, this is the time? Because the last time that happened with GasGas a few years ago, we didn't see a massive shift in sales going away from GasGas to, for example, the other brands. Yeah, they benefited a little bit, but the volume lost at GasGas at that time wasn't fully recuperated. If this happens now with GasGas again, it's going to be a big issue, which of course will shift the mindset that we might have and that others might have. But will it be done in the same way, or will it be done in the same logic? I don't think so.
it would take quite a long process though, wouldn't it, as well? Like, if you make the decision, it's not just going to turn up.
No.
Time, is it?
No, because don't misunderstand the fact that making a motorcycle is you're signing the death sentence of your business these days. For us, for example, that would be the killer.
Yeah.
Unless you have enough financial backing, unless you have enough strength to pull that off.
Yeah.
And to pull it off in a way that there is a plan for the longer run. There's a logic behind it that makes sense. The way that bike is distributed, the way that is becoming available to the market. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that can be done different these days, which is done differently in the mountain bike business, for example, or the road cycle business. There's massive shifts going on there. Perhaps we all have to look a little bit more that way to understand, hey, we can actually make the bike €1,000 more cheaper, or we can do stuff differently and make it better for people without killing dealerships or without killing what we already have.
Yeah.
It's just the setup needs to be different, and if we would ever get into it, the setup that we have is already preset for that. It's basically a matter of someday just saying, look, the 4 or 5 people who make the decision, do we believe that this is our future? And if we believe that, yeah, it can be done. For sure it can be done. But it's not on the table at the moment. No. If any of the OEMs are listening, it's not on the table. It's not on the table.
Well, I think that rounds it up really, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was great to talk to you.
Yeah.
Great to have you over.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me out here.
Yeah, it was good. We really enjoyed it. The boys liked it, and like I said, I hope a lot of people listen to the podcast. You can keep continuing the vlogs.
Yeah.
And share the passion that we all have, and keep going from there, because we all need to step it up a little bit even more and keep spreading the love.
Thank you very much.
You too. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye.
This Downtime podcast is brought to you by BVM Moto. Shop online or in-store for great deals and get professional advice on your favourite bikes, parts, clothing and accessories. Keep up to date by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube.